What is your most precious commodity? What is it that is of value to you, which exceeds all other things? Toys? Is it your beauty? Money? Let me help you here. Tough question, right? So I'm going to help you, don't worry. I'm going to suggest that you take a moment to reflect on what it is that you spend the most amount of time in your lives trying to protect and preserve. Hopefully that will lead you to the right answer. It ought to, right? The thing that you spend the most amount of time trying to protect and preserve must be the most precious thing in your life. So what is the thing that you spend most amount of time in your life you try to protect and preserve? Life? Body? What else? What is it for you, Buddha? Life? Okay. Doesn't money rank anywhere in that list? Do you not spend any amount of time protecting, preserving your money? No? All right. So if I asked you to list the top 10 things in your life, the most important top 10 things, you're going to have, life there. You're going to have your health there, possibly. At least for most of you. Then you're going to have, what else? Money. Your children, yeah? Wealth. Education. What else? Your spouses. Power, yes. Are you powerful, Buddha? You just don't know it yet. Your jobs, your employment. These are some of the things that a lot of people spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, spend a lot of energy trying to protect and preserve. Have you ever taken the time to go through that list? Just to ask yourself, are you protecting and preserving the right things? Or was this list just handed down to you from your parents or your teachers at school? They said, hey Buddha, come here. I've got a list for you. Take a look at this. You look at it. It says, the top most important things in my life. This is the teacher's list. This is your parents' list. And they said, you should have a similar list, Buddha. Oh, should I? You should. Where do I start? Well, you can take a copy of this. That's a good place to start. Where did you get this from, Mummy? Oh, funny you ask. I remember one fine day, my mother called me and she gave me a copy of it, of what was top in her life. So here's a list for you. Just take a copy, start using it. Off you go. We have become a bunch of do as I sayers. We do as somebody else says. Do as I say. We have all, more or less, we do a lot of things because someone else says, do it like this. Right? Because someone else says, this is what's important to you, we just start doing it. And we continue doing it. Oftentimes we don't take a moment to stop, look back, check, am I doing the right thing? Someone says, go down that route, go down that path, and you just start walking. Without taking a moment to check what's at the end of this road. Am I walking down the right road? What about others who have walked down this road many times before? What happened to them? What was their fate? What was their destiny? What happened to them? We don't always take the time to think this. The reason that we don't take a lot of time to think about this is because we just don't have the time. Simple as. Because lots of paths have been paved for us. They are prefabricated. The moment you came into this world, there were lots of paths that were paved out for you. All you had to do was walk. It was not down to each and every one of us to question, is this the right road to walk down? Was it? Think about where you are right now, in terms of where you are in your life. My parents visited me this week. And it's always a really interesting conversation when I speak to them. Because I walked down a path that was not paved out for me. Certainly not one my parents paved out for me. I walked an entirely different path. But up until a point in my life, I walked down the path that society had paved out for me. My parents had, my teachers had, my friends had, my relations had. I just kept walking. Not stopping to take a moment to look back, am I walking down the right path? Is this taking me to where I want to get to in my life? Whatever is at the end of this path, is that what I really want out of my life? The thing is, that's okay. If you're okay with whatever outcome there is that you get at the end of life. If you're okay with whatever outcome there is at the end of life, then that's okay. But if you're particular about the outcome that you get at the end of this life, if you're fussed, if you can be fussed about what happens at the end of this lifetime, then you have to think twice. Remember, we have to bear the consequences of our actions, not somebody else's. It doesn't matter if we do the things that somebody else asks us to do, or instructs us to do, provides us advice to do. It's the person who does that has to suffer the consequences or bear the rewards. Not the person who said to do it. Not the person who asked or instructed to do it. It's we who do the things that we do that have to bear the consequences or reap the rewards of what we have done. Isn't that right? So, did you take a moment to ask yourselves, am I going down the right path? When your parents said, walk down this path, when your teachers said so, when your spouses, when your relations said so, did you take a moment to check, am I walking down the right path, or am I just walking down it because I trust in somebody else to show me the right path? Attadipa viharata. The Buddha says, make yourself an island, because only you are there to give you shelter. It's only your hand that can provide you shelter. Nobody else. And the reason for that is, what determines our fate is the actions that we take, not the actions of somebody else, not what somebody else tells us to do or what somebody else tells us not to do. If we do it, then we have to bear the consequences. If we don't do it, yet again, we have to bear the consequences. So it's really, really, really important we take the time to question ourselves, am I doing the right things? Am I going down the right path? So I was having this conversation earlier on today with my parents, and I went through the principle, fundamental of Buddhist teaching. So I had a whiteboard here, sat down like I did with you some weeks ago, and drawing out all those points that I wanted to emphasize. And so this was the first time my parents had the opportunity to actually go through this process of, what vexation is, what pleasure is, and how pleasure is the relief from vexation. So apparently they'd been listening to sermons, but they'd not really understood any of it at all. So today was the first opportunity for them to actually go through that in detail. And I was questioning them, have you understood it? And I was cross-questioning them just to make sure that they had. So at the end of this lesson or session, I'm trying to convince them that pleasure is nothing other than the relief from vexation. But my mother is not convinced. She's a tough one. My mother could never easily be convinced. So she says, Are you sure? Surely there must be times where we experience pleasure but with no vexation beforehand. Surely there must be times. I said, yes, there must be. I just haven't come across one yet. And so, today, I gave them a challenge. So we came to an agreement. It may be that we may not see each other for very long. I'm talking to you now. Because here's the challenge that I came to an agreement with my parents. I challenged them to go out, to go and discuss with friends, relations, Amma and Appa to discuss, and come back and tell me one instance in their life where they have experienced pleasure without relief from vexation. So that is the challenge to them. And on my part, if they come back with just one instance, I said, I'm prepared to disrobe. And I'll come back to lay life. You should have seen the smile on my mother's face. I said, yes, I promise you. Give me just one instance where you have experienced pleasure without there being any vexation beforehand, and where that pleasure was not the result of relief from that vexation, and I shall disrobe. Because you have just proved that the Buddha's Dhamma is untrue. You have just found a flaw in the Buddha's teaching. Hurrah! Eureka! And if you do so, then what is the point in my being here? What is the point in me being in a robe if the Buddha's teaching is flawed? Right? If the Buddha's teaching is flawed and I have committed my life to practicing his teaching, I'm not prepared to do that. So I have sent them away with a challenge. So if you ever meet them, come across them, please help them. They're desperately trying to find an instance where they have experienced pleasure without there being vexation beforehand. So if you come across them, then please help them. Be so kind to them. I'm sure there must have been instances in your life as well where you have experienced pleasure without there being vexation beforehand. So show them, share that experience with them. And I await my mother's return. So she went away pretty excited. There was a hop in her step that she didn't have on her way here. How convinced are you? Can your conviction be shaken? Is what you have a belief, or is what you have faith? Or is what you have conviction? There's blind faith, and then there's conviction. Faith doesn't take you very far. Sometimes the things that we do with faith really lead us down a rabbit hole. Like, for example, is it not through faith that we got into relationships with friends? You trusted them, right? You trusted them to do the right thing for you. The right thing for you. But they didn't always do the right thing for you. Half the time they did what was right for them, which wasn't the right outcome for you. And therefore, that relationship that you got into through faith really didn't get you very far. Those relationships came to an end very soon. So that was a relationship that was based on faith. Blind faith. Because you asked somebody else. Think about when you got married. How did you decide your partner for life? You asked people. Is he a good person? Is she a kind person? Do you think he or she is going to make a fine partner for me? Because the only way you're going to know with conviction is after the fact. But then it's too late. You have already taken that step. This is why some relationships don't work out. In fact, most relationships don't work out. Most of the time, people make their minds up. People make their mind up to be okay